Hello, everybody. This is Kelly Kleiman, and you're listening to the DealershipNews.com podcast, where we spotlight the who's happening in the automotive industry. It's foot soldiers, visionaries, executives, salesmen, GMs, owners, service managers, CEOs, and industry vendors alike. Our guest today is based out of the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area. He's a graduate not only from Princeton, but also attended the University of Mannheim, and then went on to receive his MBA from Wharton. He's very well studied and accomplished. He is on our show this Monday afternoon. He's our guest, Mr. Scot Eisenfelder of Affinitv. Scott, it's a pleasure to chat with you.
Pleasure to chat with you as well.
What got you into the automotive industry to begin with? Has it been in your blood since you were young, or were you recruited into it on some level?
Yeah, so I don't often admit this, but I'm actually not really a car guy. I stumbled into it because when I was leaving Wharton, I went to work for a guy who happened to be running the auto practice of Booz Allen. And then I kind of followed him for the next decade of my career. And by that time, it kind of did get into my blood. I don't think there's an industry out there that has more impact on the overall economy, and also that has as many interesting questions that face it. So it allows you to have a lifelong learning experience as I have for the last 30 years.
And the people in it are interesting, and they're actually fun to be around. It's a pretty exciting industry, that's for sure. I couldn't agree more. So let's pretend you're in the Empire State Building and the president of the Lithium Motor Group has just jumped in the Vader. What does your 20-story elevator pitch sound like?
So what my 20-story pitch sounds like is the industry is going through very fundamental change, increasing pressure on the service department to carry the weight of the dealerships. And in order to do that, we really have to focus on driving dollars per unit operations. We have to be thinking about leveraging each opportunity we have to bring a customer back and making sure that we're fully meeting all of their service needs.
Speaking of which, when your sales team approaches a dealer or a dealership group, what kind of checklist do they go through to ascertain that dealership's specific needs?
Yeah, great question. I think what we look at is we try to understand, where they're missing today. Are they missing, getting people back at what I call within the window, the first 1 to 3 years? Is it 4 to 6-year-old vehicles? Where is that kind of kink in the retention curve that they're having a challenge with today? How are they doing at conquesting, customers who maybe didn't purchase from them, but still have their brand vehicles? And then, where do we see, what kind of investments are they making today? Are they investing in all of the media channels that they could be touching the customer with, or are there gaps in what channels they're using to reach people?
Now, you have what you call a customer profile dashboard. I think it's pretty interesting. I took a peek at it earlier. How does it differ from a typical CRM, and what are some of the key elements?
Yeah, so what we're really looking at, at trying to understand the propensity for a customer to come back to that dealership and do their service there. So, one of the things that we're looking at is what has been their history, or the frequency for which they're coming back to the dealership. When they're coming, are they getting everything done? They're getting the tires done as well as the brakes, and then how responsive are they to different messages? So by that, what we're trying to understand, if I've got to go pull another 5 or 10 ROs this month, who are the people that haven't been in that are most likely to come in, and how do I pull them forward? So it's looking at a lot of the history from that consumer, and then when we don't have history from that particular consumer, maybe they're new to the dealership, we do what we call lookalike models. What vehicle do they have? Did they finance or lease? what 9-digit zip code are they in, right? Are they close enough to the dealership? And what other F&I products would be another thing that we put into that kind of lookalike model to make some assumptions before we have enough history to know.
Now, you have something called a lifetime value score. If a customer has a low lifetime value score, what strategy? I want to get into the meat and potatoes here. What strategies are put into place to lift that score and bring that revenue back into the dealership, basically?
Right. So one of the things an interesting question, right? So there's one of the things that we've always thought about is your lifetime value score created or made, right? So that's kind of the first question. What I mean by that is a lot of times that lifetime value score may be low because of things that are inherent about the customer, right? Either their economic situation, their distance from the dealership, and so forth. So there's things that are very, very difficult to change. So it's important not just to look at the score, but why is that the score, right? So first of all, in those customers, honestly, the right answer may be to reduce our investment in communication, to focus it on customers perhaps who may have one or for example, maybe they live close to the store, but their economic situation may put them at risk to try to choose a lower cost channel. So we would rather put our money against that customer and say, how do we offer them discounts to get them to come into the store? Or if it's the reverse, maybe they're further away, but their economics suggest that they should be servicing at the dealership. Rather than offering a discount off the value of the service, we may recommend for that customer offering a free loaner car, alternative transportation, Uber voucher, or things like that to overcome whatever that barrier is particular for that customer that's preventing them from becoming a higher value.
Well, what if it's a reputational issue on the part of the dealership and they just don't trust them? Because frankly, I take my vehicles to an Indy, and I think that any dealership that could look across the street and see the Indy guy driving up in a Lambo knows that they have some problems in their service department. So my thought would be, there's probably a need for something along those lines. But
so some of that is messaging too, right? I think it's interesting. I thought one of the more clever marketing I've seen from a dealership. He actually used the Help Wanted ad from a local Pep Boys, and you know what the Help Wanted ad said? No experience required, right? So I think that there's a question. It's certainly reputation, trust is a huge issue in our industry, right? Is that unfortunately, either earned or not earned, that a lot of consumers feel that dealers are loading up the Christmas tree with a lot of things, and do I really need them or not? And most of us aren't expert mechanics, so we don't really know what we need or not. So a lot of it, it depends upon a high quality communication, and I kind of go back to the old theory of you got to tell them what they need before they need it, right? So how do you have an ongoing communication with that customer? Are you doing a good job of when you redeliver the car to tell them about the things from the multi-point inspection that were in yellow, right? So that we're preparing the consumer to understand that the next time they come in, we're probably going to be talking about replacing that. It's really hard to, if you think about what we're often trying to do at the dealership level, we're asking people to make some pretty big financial decisions on the spur of the moment, when perhaps they were only expecting to come in and spend $40, $50 on an oil change. Now all of a sudden they need brakes, and maybe there's one or two other things that need to be done. They weren't emotionally or financially prepared to make that decision. So what we try to do is to put as much of that communication up front into the original invitation to the dealership to set expectations about what may be taking place in that conversation, so that the consumer can get themselves emotionally or financially prepared to say yes when asked.
I'm listening to a lot of psychological componentry, so to speak, when it comes to your solutions and how you approach a customer and the strategy involved. What distinguishes Affinitv from other digital marketers in what anybody would consider an extremely competitive space? And feel free to get deep into the different solutions that you offer, because I've done some research into the company's solutions, what you guys provide, and I'm pretty impressed with it. But let's hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Yeah. So I think first it starts with our Connective One platform. So we when we put the companies together almost 3 years ago now, we launched a project to build a truly modern platform that you mentioned part of it before, built around some deep customer analytics, so that we can pull data from a lot of different places. The DMS is only part of it. There's a lot of third-party sources we can pull in to augment what we get out of the DMS, to provide scoring about customers, right? But that scoring is only as good as the ability to act on that scoring. So we built a very sophisticated rules engine that allows us to differentiate in how we communicate, not just on make, model, mileage, but some of those other, like as you were calling them, psychological factors or demographics about that customer. So I can distinguish between a customer who's got a 30,000 mile on his BMW 3 Series may react differently than the one who has a 7 Series, and may react differently, based upon the scores that we were talking about earlier. So one is a deep, rich database that can take data in from anywhere. Second one is a very complex rules engine that can act on that data. And the third component of it is we've gone beyond the mailbox, right, of saying in terms of we also invested in a scheduling software, and then we invested in a tablet solution, so that when you bring your car in, that the service advisor can meet you at the car and do the evaluation there. And the reason we did that is we see each of those as really another communication touch point. We were talking about trust a few minutes ago, and imagine if I sent you a coupon in the mail, you show up to schedule online, and there's no coupon there. That goes beyond just frustration. That also gets to the point of trust. Yeah. So we want to be able to keep that communication going from your mailbox, your email box, your Facebook page, wherever we put that initial communication, into the scheduling. Use that scheduler to inform you about those other needs you might have with the vehicle. Carry that communication into the service lane, and then to use the tablet in the service lane, not only just to communicate, but to gather additional information about yourself. What did you say no to? What did you say yes to? So that we can use that in our follow-up. So it's a completely integrated system, and built on the most modern technologies available today.
It's amazing how we use technology as a tool to help improve our business and the overall efficiency. It's mind-boggling, and hopefully we could just get the people trained to use it properly, and they do have a lot better, right? Well, you mentioned coupons, and I've seen some really strong results with coupons. How do you roll with your coupon marketing strategy? Is it via DM, digitally distributed via email, text, and what is the conquest marketing component to it?
Yeah, so let me kind of deal with the couponing first. It's interesting. We have a challenge in automotive that a lot of other couponing strategies don't have, right? Is car dealerships don't really have a point of sale system the way your typical retailer does. So redeeming coupons themselves is problematic actually in the car business. So which creates two challenges for us. One is, how do we communicate an offer and a value? And then how is that value brought forward by the consumer into the dealership? And so, we use the term couponing kind of broadly, our business tends to skew heavily towards luxury brands. And so couponing in terms of dollars off is not always the most effective. It may be another offer, right, as I was mentioning around service loaners or other things that we can do to help the consumer get more value out of their transaction other than just straight dollars off. So from a conquesting standpoint, there's a lot of really, really interesting things that we can start to do. One is, if I find that you're with geofencing, we might put a geofence around your independent store there that you bring in your Lambo to, and be able to pop you a message that, hey, there's are you getting genuine Lambo parts? Are you what's the level of training that they have, to try to give you some messaging that to bring you back based upon geofencing. We also do a lot of looking at other lists out there. For example, I think one of the lists that's tremendously underused from a conquest standpoint is unsold prospects from your CRM. Unfortunately, we don't sell a car to every person who walks into a dealership, and we often then forget about them. But in fact, many of those people went and bought a same brand car, either used, maybe from a CarMax or from one of our competitors. And too many dealerships don't actively market from a service standpoint to those people that they fail to sell a new car to. So there's a lot of things that we look at it from a conquesting standpoint. Generally, it's underinvested in by most dealerships. They count on too heavily on just servicing the cars that they sell.
Yeah, even if it's incremental increases, it's worth it because it's part of the program. So you have dedicated business development managers to help support each and every dealership. Do they double as salesmen that also manage each account, or do they provide a specific support function to actually direct each individual campaign?
Yeah, so their primary function is as an account manager, right? The landscape is always changing. So while we have I'll call it a base program, it's their job to get to know that they'll have about 40 dealerships that each one of them deals with. It's their job to they go see them once a month and to figure out how that dealership's doing against its KPIs and how the program should be tweaked to maximize the value that they're getting out of it. So that's their primary function, right? Now, we do ask them to sell campaigns in, right? Maybe it's we're coming into spring, great time to do spring tire campaigns. Mm-hmm. So over and above the base program, they are expected to sell other value-added programs into that dealership, as well as bring on a few new stores in a given year. So a little bit of both, but mostly, I'd say 70% of their activity is really account management and helping the dealer derive the most amount of value out of our solutions.
Can you share with us a few case studies so we can help you get more clients? I know there's some good stuff out there. When you talk coupon, I've seen coupons work just remarkably well.
Yeah.
I know that's not all you do, but I've seen numbers that were mind-boggling. So fire away.
Yeah, so it's, when we look at it, what's kind of interesting to us is what we see when we pull together more than one media. So I'll give you a great example out of one of our OEM clients, right, where for years we've been doing their spring and fall tire campaign, right, and we get incrementally a little bit smarter each year. Mm-hmm. Well, last year, on top of the paper and email that we were doing, we started posting to their owner base, to their Facebook feeds. We started putting the campaign there, and an amazing result of we were able to increase the redemption rate from that by 30 to 40%, depending upon the area of the country, and just tremendous increase with actually a relatively little incremental investment. I think that adding the Facebook feeds added 5-6% to the total cost and raised the redemption by 30 to 40%. So a lot of times it's just tweaking the channels that you use and recognizing that as human beings, it often takes more than one time to get through. In fact, I think my wife says for the average male that she's married to, it takes at least 5 or 6 messages, right? But I think it's important that we recognize that just talking once to a customer may not be enough to take them over the hump.
What do you have coming up in the next year that's going to get us excited?
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's a lot of buzz there's a lot of buzz in the industry around AI, right? And how do we use artificial intelligence? So we've been working with a few manufacturers on what I call is using the machine to read repair orders, and by going through the repair order and finding certain keywords allows us to dramatically increase the number of declined services that we find. I'll give you an example. Is that most dealerships rely on their service advisors to mark in the DMS that you declined the tires, for example, that we presented you. Well, a service advisor can only be asked to, I always say, narc on themselves enough about how many times they failed to sell, right? So typically they don't mark all the ones that they failed to sell. Well, we don't need them to anymore. We just go and read the notes, and you'll see things, like if on a repair order it says 3:30 seconds, that's not probably a wrench, right? That's saying that someone stabbed the tires and there's only 3:30 seconds of tire wear left, right? So we're able to go through and artificially read all of that, interpret what's gone on with that RO, and then update the communications. In that case, we've taken the average number of declined services that we found from 4 to 5 ROs per 100 up to 25. With a 40% response rate, that's increasing the amount of service business by 8%. So we're just tapping the surface. Every time we take a look at what we can do with this AI technology, we're finding new applications.
The edge you give a dealer, for many of them, might be the difference between operating in the red or the black.
It absolutely is. I mean, that's the hard part of what we're trying to help our customers with today is it's getting harder and harder to make money, right? We're not, as I like to say, we're in a razor and razor blade business, right? Is that we're not making money on the razors anymore. And it's incumbent on the service department to carry more and more of the burden of keeping dealerships afloat. And so we got to keep finding the edge, right? We got to keep finding the edge of new ways to get another 5, 10, 15 ROs a month into the dealership. And that's what we're committed to do with our partners.
We're in the 9th inning, bottom of the 9th. Okay. Last question, Scott. Where do you see the company 5 years from now?
Yeah. So, it's funny. I wake up every day. I tell my team, I look at just the white spaces that we could be filling in, and we should be 2 or 3 times the size we are today. And that really comes in filling in those gaps, right? There's so many opportunities to move down additional digital channels. The independents beat us to a pulp in the digital channels. They have to. They don't know who owns a new car, right? So they got to go fight in that digital channel, and we've kind of ceded it to them. So I see us doing a lot more digital marketing than we're doing today. It's the fastest growing part of our business, but will be the predominant part of what we do. And then, as I said, I think the other is really learning how to use data to fully service a customer. What we didn't talk about was some of the interesting things we're doing in what I'll call vehicles like mine, of using the data to be able to interpret what other things similar vehicles need. And it's going to be it's going to be digital, and it's going to be using the data to strengthen that link between the consumer and the dealership.
Well, go ahead and expand on that for a couple minutes.
Sure. So,
absolutely.
If you think about our friends at Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've made a fortune, right, out of suggesting books, music, other goods that you would buy based upon what other similar people are buying, right? And so we have the opportunity, because we're sitting on millions and millions of repair orders. We should be able to know when a BMW 5 Series with 40,000 miles comes in for brakes, what other things are likely to be needed on that vehicle, right? Because we've seen thousands and thousands of similar situations.
Sure.
And we can tell you whether that's different in California, where you're doing a lot of start and stop, versus Montana, where it's an open highway, right? So those are the things that we should be able to do. And now go back to that chain that I was talking about before. I'm going to tell you before you go schedule. I'm going to tell you when you schedule. And I'm going to tell you in the service lane. And then I'm going to tell you after you get your car back. Just a constant communication about the full service needs of your vehicle based upon what other people like you or vehicles like yours tended to need. We're excited about that. We think that type of capability is a breakthrough in creating that ongoing communication between the dealership and its customers.
Sure, absolutely. Hey, you're at 120,000 miles on your Tiguan, and this is generally what we see happening to these vehicles at this point in time. If your search engine light comes on, or there's any particular issues, just let me know, and let's have a conversation about it instead of selling them right off the bat. It's ingenious to have that kind of data at hand. It's using it smart.
It is, and it goes back to something you were talking about earlier in terms of the issue of trust and all that we have with the consumer. If all we're ever doing is selling, we don't have trust. If I spend my time informing, I start to earn your trust.
I love that. It's almost the old saying, always be selling, has turned to never be selling, which is probably the more effective way of approaching a potential customer, keeping somebody long-term. That old saying of customer retention is important. It starts with trust, transparency, and all that good stuff. Is there anything else coming up? Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure that the people were aware of? Because you have a great approach, and it's unique in several senses, and I want to make sure that we've covered everything.
I feel like we've covered quite a bit today. I think that it goes back to, if I just kind of, repeat kind of where we're coming from, right, which is it really is focused on being a complete communication cycle, right, from your mailbox to scheduling into the service lane, and setting ourselves up with a platform that allows us to use data in new and interesting ways.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us. I wish you all the best in the world moving forward. And thanks a million for joining us today, folks. That was Scot Eisenfelder, the CEO and Executive Chairman of Affinitv, Inc. Meanwhile, I am Kelly Kleiman. This has been the Dealer News Podcast. It's Monday. A lot of fun days ahead of us, and then it's the weekend. Have a great day, everybody.